Welcome to the Flock and Hive podcast, a place for curious minds to explore all that makes life so weird and wonderful. And this week,
in Sweden, you get praised for being hard worker, out mingling all the time and social and in the front line. But I think a lot of important decisions and stuff is also done in the back end of things. And we cannot forget about those people because we work, I'm not going to say that we work harder, but we probably do. We work in silence, and that should not be forgotten.
We speak to Louise Henning about being a highly sensitive person.
hello.
Hello. Quick, top 5 HSP traits. Go.
Oh God, feeling overwhelmed by noises, bright lights and uncomfortable clothes, social anxiety and hating small talk, hating violent films, feeling the need for regular downtime and intense people pleasing.
Well done, you pass. All these things I bet people can relate to. And dear listener, you may even learn something about yourself today.
So today's chat is with Louise Henning, who is an HSP guru and a coach, and she runs an amazing Instagram, which is essentially tips and tricks to how to navigate life as a highly sensitive person. So we're going to talk about what that actually means, because it's actually now a known trait, and we think we're both HSPs, don't we?
I mean, I was always aware that I was an empath, but hadn't really understood there was other satellite traits around that, which is what Louise goes on to talk about.
And I think this is an important conversation to have, to raise awareness of the trait itself.
Yeah, because we talk about type A people and the alpha type person, don't we? And there are some quite reductive categories that we're all sort of aware that, your sociotype is attributed to. But this one seems a bit like floundering in the corner and a bit disrespected and not necessarily as impactful. But if anything, it's the sort of, in my mind, the silent but powerful engine that's powering everything that's all noisy up at the top.
That is it. It's because it's the quiet ones who would just kind of slink away because actually they don't want to be involved in that power struggle, but actually you really, really need to have them as part of the conversation. It's raising awareness that those people are valid, especially in a time in the world where we are desperate for more empathic leadership. It's not just about the bulldozers and who can shout loudest. We need to have HSPs on our teams at work. We need to appreciate the gifts that they bring and understand the challenges as well so we can support them.
Yeah. One thing I actually do appreciate about being empath/HSP is as much as you can experience things so savagely and so intensely in a negative way, the upside is that you get that absolute euphoric connection to something really quite simple like being in nature or having a deep connection just with one person. So there really are the highs and the benefits of that. And I do think it just makes you feel connected. That's basically the human holy grail, right?
That is such a good point. It really is one of the huge, huge benefits of having high sensitivity. And in fact, that leads us nicely to the word of the week.
Da-na-na-nam, ba-na-na-nam, word of the week. That was a cross between the Addams Family and Blockbuster.
It was very good. So tell me, have you heard of this word? Numinous.
No, I've heard of luminous, but not numinous. No.
No, well, it comes from the Latin numen, which means divine power, and it describes something that inspires a sense of spiritual or religious awe, often linked to profound emotional experiences. So, like being in nature, you can have that sort of sense. So, if you wanted to use it in a sentence, for example, you could say, she stood alone under the vast star-filled sky, watching the auroras happen on the Isle of Wight, when she was overwhelmed by a numinous feeling. Or you might say, the moment was numinous, or there was a real numinous beauty of this gorgeous ancient cathedral that was, left me in silent awe, sort of thing. So HSPs can access that.
I feel like I have that a lot. Even just when I go for a run, I've started to hug the trees at the end and thank nature. Because where I live in Epping Forest, it's really beautiful, especially at this time of year. And I just have that numinous feeling, especially when all the little babies are out. You and I went for a walk the other day, and you spent a lot of time filming baby geese. You are filming baby animals years old.
They are so cute. They were so unbelievably cute. The ducklings and the goslings. I didn't know how cute goslings were. Like the proper cartoon style, fluffy yellow goslings. Oh my God, the sense I got from that. And then we saw the one with its broken leg, and we both just didn't know what to do with ourselves.
Oh God, that was so sad. Having lived with mum for the last year whilst we had our house renovated, I did some skullduggery into some of my old diaries. And oh, bless young me, not knowing what to do with my HSP brain, some of the poetry, some of the endless diary writing. Oh my God, the way I was feeling the world, it's actually quite incredible. Kind of cringe, a lot of it. But it was so deep and so heavy. I obviously felt very under the weight of something that I wasn't really allowed to emote outside or didn't know how to, didn't have the tools to.
Brilliant, you were writing it down though. I mean, that's journaling. That's what getting it out of your system. It's what I've been trying to get my girls to do, and they do actually. And I think it's been really helping because you really feel that as a tween and then a teen, don't you? And
Yeah.
it is a time where you really can just put all your thoughts down somewhere and totally cringe to read about. My eldest, who you know very well, very quiet, very deep thinker, writes lyrics. And I know she won't mind me saying because we talk about it together now, and she finds it quite funny. But it was we used to be all about spilling the blood of innocent children, like really proper dark kind of really murderous stuff. And like, do I need to be worried about this? Um, yeah, she just really enjoyed writing about death and different ways to die. Yeah.
But that's probably processing, trying to understand death.
I have promised I won't read her diary, but maybe one day I'll have to.
Only if she is exhibiting spilling the blood of innocent children. But she's clearly in touch with her shadow self, which nowadays I know to be a very important thing.
How do you get in touch with your shadow self? Because I know that I've got one and I've sort of probably got an idea of what it is, but I've never sort of been through the process.
So, in my experience with my therapist, it's literally having a conversation with yourself, either on paper or in a private space, just saying what's upset you, how did you feel about that, or why in that situation do you react like that, and then you answer back in the first person. It sounds bonkers, but it's so revealing because you're having this conversation that no one's ever had with you before, and you have the confidence to really say your truth because no one's hearing apart from yourself. And so you can really bring stuff up to the surface, and you give gratitude and value to your shadow self because every single person has that dark side. It is the yin, it is the yang, and we feel the shame around it a lot, which is why we don't like to go there. And the whole theory is that you end up feeling more at peace with yourself and more balanced and less shame and more freedom.
How come I've never done that? I love the idea of that. Might go and hang out in the forest and have a little word with myself.
It's a Jungian theory. It's from Carl Jung, Jungian.
I want to know more about Carl Jung, and so I'm going to do some digging because I think we should have an episode on it at some point. I'm not sure why yet, but he just keeps popping up.
He is the granddaddy of psychology. In fact, later on, we talk about the Myers Briggs personality test because it's relative to what Louise Henning is saying. The people who wrote that in, I think, the 40s were totally inspired by Carl Jung's theory of the psyche. So it's all linked.
Well, there you go. We will be finding an expert on that. But speaking about experts, it's probably time that we hear from this week's one, isn't it?
Yes.
So this is the conversation that we had about HSPs, highly sensitive people, with Louise Henning. Here's what she had to say. Good morning, Louise Henning. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Good morning.
This really is something that I think HSPs will love. And I thought you'd be a great person to talk about actually what it means to be an HSP, where did that term come from, etc. But first of all, can you just tell us a little bit about you?
I'm based in Sweden. I'm a HSP coach mentor, but I work full time on a PR bureau. But I'm on maternity leave as of right now. I run an HSP Instagram, or like a little safe cloud, I like to call it, where HSP can feel like themselves and like learn a lot about themselves. And I'm also a graphic designer, an art director, and social media manager.
Yeah. So let's go back to basics. Tell me, HSP, what does that stand for? What does it mean? Where did that term come from, and how did you know you were one?
So HSP stands for highly sensitive person, and it basically, if you want it to be easy to grasp, it's like you have your sensory antennas a little bit further out than non-HSPs. But it kind of refers to having a heightened sensitivity to stimuli in the environment. So we process things differently compared to the average person. So big crowds, bright lights, sudden noises, textures in clothing, other people's moods, like it affects us differently than non-HSPs. It comes from the person who coined it. Her name is Elaine N. Aron, and she's a clinical psychologist, I think you say that, researcher from back in the 90s. So she coined the term, and she later wrote a book about it. So she was like the mother of highly sensitive person, the term. She has done all the research and all that stuff. So that's where it comes from.
I found that book a few years ago, and I remember giving it to a couple of people going, "This is the manual for how I work.
Yeah.
Please read it." And no one
I
did.
know.
Then I forgot about it. And then when my daughter, who is highly sensitive, a real empath, just
Mm,
everything that you were describing about absorbing other people's emotions and just really like thinking more deeply about anything emotional, like way more than a lot of kids in her class seem to be, and like getting really affected by it.
mm.
Sensory sensitivity, can't get dressed in the morning, etc. And that's when the therapist said, have you heard of a book called The Highly Sensitive Person? And it brought it all back again. And I was like, we need to make sure that people know this, don't we?
Yeah.
That this is a trait. Can you tell us a bit more about it?
I get a lot of DMs about that actually, if it's something that can be diagnosed, if it's like a sickness or illness. But it's not, it's a personality trait, and it's around 15 to 20% of the population could be classified as HSP based on Elaine's research. So it's like either you are HSP or someone you know, probably. So there's a lot of us out there.
That's a fifth of the world's population, and I've heard that it could also be up to about 30% as well.
Yeah, I think that's like the new number that's coming up slowly.
I'm happy with
15 to,
that.
yeah. Because it's
I
also like not black and white. It's not like you're HSP or not. It's like on a spectrum. So you can be a little bit less HSP or very much HSP. So definitely 30%, I think. Because I think we tend to forget about the ones that are in the beginning of the spectrum.
There's a spectrum for everything, though, isn't
Yeah.
there? Yeah. So, what does this knowledge of really understanding that you are probably an HSP bring, do you think? Just knowing that, how can it help your life?
For me, it was like an epiphany. I know who I am and I know how I work, but it kind of like catapulted me into like more digging deep and getting to know myself. And I think that's the big thing when you realize your HSP. It helps you getting to know yourself better, and it makes it easier for you to handle things in life.
Yeah, and also you can put some boundaries in place
Mm,
once you
yeah.
know, you're like, okay, I now I understand that I'm going to react like that when I go to a parents' evening where there's really bright strip lighting and there's loads of people and there's loads of echoing and it's completely intense. I know I've always hated it, but now I
Mm,
know why I hate it. I can manage that a little better, so I can make sure that I step out and I and take a break, for example, from that, or I just make sure that I've got some time afterwards, some downtime, because I think
mm.
downtime is a very important thing for HSPs, isn't it?
Yeah, it's crucial. But I think, like the way you put it, you can create your personal toolbox for what you need when you get overwhelmed and stuff like that. And it's really important to have that.
Going back to the term highly sensitive person, do you think there are negative connotations with the word sensitive?
Yeah, big time. Like being sensitive is really like you're weak, you're fragile, you can't take a joke. You're probably heard stop being so sensitive.
Yes,
Yeah.
100. Yeah, it's definitely negative, isn't it?
Yeah. And people just say it without even thinking, I think. I don't know. It's not accepted in the society, I think, to be sensitive because
Mm.
people still use the word sensitive in a negative way.
Yeah.
So,
I've heard a new term. Have you come across Willow McIntosh from
no.
Illuminance? He's an HSP guru, and he runs courses for people who want to train to be HSP coaches. And
Hmm.
but he's trying to rebrand sensitive as sensory, which I think is brilliant. So, because I prefer HSP to stand for highly sensory person.
Yeah.
which means that, yeah, well, yeah, it's obvious what that means. And he also talks about having high sensory intelligence, which I think completely flips it and gives it a much more positive look and hints at the fact that there are superpowers to be had as an HSP, especially in the workplace. Is that,
Mm.
what would you say about that? What's been your experience in that area?
Yeah, I think like the empathic side is really huge when it comes to workplace or like in life overall. But picking up things that your boss or the person who works with HR does not pick up, I think that's one of the most important things for having people thrive in the workplace. So it's not that we pick up and like call somebody out. It's just that we know when something's wrong or like if someone's not happy and we could make it a more nice work environment. It's not our responsibility to do that, but we can use it and talk to HR or our boss or something and inform them about what needs to be done.
Because you're right, intuition and gut feel is
Yeah.
is a huge part of being an empath and an HSP
Mm,
as well. And I'm so with you. I think if it were understood more that there's, about a fifth of people in the workplace are HSP, then use that and listen
mm,
to them. Don't just go, oh, don't be silly, as you said. I mean, imagine what the workplace could look like if
mm.
HSPs were taken seriously.
In Sweden, you get praised for really like being out mingling all the time and social and like in the front line. But
Mm.
I think a lot of important decisions is also done in the back end of things. And we cannot forget about those people because we work, I'm not going to say that we work harder, but we probably do. We work in silence and that
Yeah.
should not be forgotten.
And the same goes for leadership, I
Yeah,
think, isn't it? When was the last time you saw an HSP being a massive CEO of a company?
no.
No. Do you not find that that might be because we're the kind of people that even if you really want to succeed and you want to be leading, but you get to a point and you're like, I don't need this in my life, and you just sort of
Mm.
quietly leave?
And also, like, I don't have the energy to fight up there, like in the
Exactly.
top.
Maybe every CEO needs an HSP coach in their ear
Yep.
in the workplace.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I would love to do. Like, if you have a stamp, I want to do like that in the workplace, like HSP friendly workplace.
But why not?
Yeah.
Why not? I put my pronouns on my emails now just to show that I'm open and appreciative of that new norm. Why can't we have that too? Would you say that HSP is a type of neurodiversity? It's just not one that is easily diagnosed.
I think so. There's like a huge conversation going on and like with this. I'm not sure yet, but I think so.
I've been thinking about this area a lot, empowering neurodiverse people, particularly, and sort of praising their superpowers and bringing those out.
Mm,
And
mm,
I want to do the same for HSPs within Flock and Hive as well. I
mm,
think the problem is we've
mm,
got these brilliant tests online, and I know you've got Elaine's on your website as well. So we'll tell
mm.
people where to go to find that.
Yeah.
People are really skeptical of anything that you can't back up with scientific data.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the thing.
So let's come back to you a bit. So you say you're training to be a coach,
Yeah,
and
I'm doing it on the side of motherhood and trying to survive.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's quite a toughie, of
Yeah.
course. So tell me more about, you're saying you're getting a lot of DMs from people asking you certain questions. What kind of things are coming up?
Mostly how to get rid of their sensitivity.
Oh gosh, how sad.
Yeah, I know it's so sad. And also like just support where they cannot talk about their sensitivity in the family because they will not be accepted for who they are. So that's like heavy stuff. Yeah, and I get that. It's not like it's easy for us to say because Sweden, we're really like far ahead, I think, talking about and being ourselves. There's a lot of people who are not living in alignment with their sensitivity, and that is draining. But otherwise, it's just like I'm overwhelmed. What should I do? Yeah.
And I guess as an
So
HSP, you wanna fix. I don't know.
yeah,
I get that. It feels awful that you can't fix everyone.
I know.
Oh, overwhelm is a big thing.
Yeah, really big thing. And I think that a lot of HSPs are also people pleasers. So it comes naturally to overextend yourself again and again and again, because all you want to do is like help people, and it's a big task to do both and take care of yourself and family and whatever you have in going on in your life, and also like having relatives or family or colleagues or whatever not understanding their sensitivity. So let's say me in the workplace, my colleagues will not understand why I want to eat lunch by myself sometimes, because I've been talking to you guys all day. I just want to be by myself, not talking to anyone, watching a TV show,
But if
eating
it was an
lunch.
understood thing, people would realize that certain people just need to step away,
Yeah. And like, I'm not
recharge.
mad at you.
It's not
It's not
personal.
about you. It's about me.
I struggle with that
Um,
a lot, even within my marriage sometimes. I think because people can get very easily offended, can't they?
yeah. And also, it takes a lot of energy to have to explain yourself over and over again. No, I'm not mad this time either. I think there's like a necklace. If you have diabetes in
Yeah.
Sweden, you can have, yeah, we should have the same.
But yes, I like that because you don't want to be telling people that you're an HSP, but you want something on you, a bit like, baby on board in
Yeah,
English.
exactly.
Yeah,
Like a
just
paw on the window in the
yeah,
car.
yeah. That would be really useful, wouldn't
Yeah.
it? Just like a
Yeah.
little symbol that you could wear that people would understand. You don't have to say anything. So, talk with a bit more kindness. Don't
Yeah.
be so punchy and direct because you won't get the
Oh,
best out of me, all of that. As we speak, it really does feel like there is definitely a movement to raising the profile of HSP and making people more aware of what that means, both in the workplace but in real life as well.
yeah.
But in terms of coping strategies for HSPs, are there any that you fall back on?
Yeah, I have a few, like, as you said before, like recharging and set boundaries. It's a little bit more of a like hard work setting boundaries, but than to just have downtime, but it's just as important, I think. Boundaries are really hard. I still practice no, but
Yes.
like I practice all the time. Even though I teach setting boundaries, it's something you have to work with daily,
Yeah.
because it's
People
super
pleasers don't
scary.
like boundaries, do they? Because
No.
they cross them.
And if someone does not like your boundary, it's super scary, and it's probably because you are right setting that boundary, because you have probably overextended yourself, and they're used to you being like their little assistant. The boundary, it's going to upset people.
If it's difficult, it's because it's right.
Yeah.
Ooh.
But like in the workplace, I think it's the hardest, because me personally, I've always been a person who works really quick. Like I'm super fast, and I do things that comes with short notice. I just fix those things. And I don't have the energy to do that, but I still do it because I want to be liked in the workplace. Because if I'm not liked in the workplace, I'm not going to have a job, and I'm going to be the whole thing. But trying to set boundaries in the workplace, I think for me is the hardest, because people are so used to me being a certain way. When it comes to family, for me, it's easier for people to understand why I set boundaries, and they're really supportive in that way. But boundary settings is huge.
So would you say
Um,
that HSPs have to work harder in the workplace to get noticed?
Or yeah, I think we do, because we do like little things. We are really detail oriented, so we pick up things that other like non HSPs probably don't. So we our job description, but also a little bit more like household chores as well. So I
Mm,
think we work more, but I don't think it's something that's asked of us. But we do it because we just want to keep the peace and like make it
that's
a
it.
nice work environment.
Yeah. But also I find, and I don't know if this is the HSP part of me, but clutter, I cannot deal with it
Ugh,
at
no.
all. Even though my house is full of it because I have two children and
Yeah.
dogs and cats, and so I need that. I need the space to be clear, and I
Yeah.
sort of presume that everyone else does too, but maybe they just don't.
No, I know my husband's he's learned why I don't like clutter. So he's been stepping up like big time on doing dishes and all that stuff. I go to bed earlier than him, so when he's up late, he cleans the kitchen. So when I get down in the morning, it's not cluttered. So that's really, I love him for that. A lot of other reasons as well, of course, but it's fun.
Isn't
But
that just doesn't that just show what could happen if people understand that little thing?
yeah,
Then you're grateful and you're loving because he's done this thing for you, and he'll see a difference in
yeah.
you as well. I mean, oh.
But I also feel like there's a lot of things going on in our heads, like all the input and sensory stuff, and we have to process and all the responsibilities and stuff. And if it's like super busy in our heads and super busy in our homes and clutter and stuff,
And to your point, when you know this, you can get less frustrated at other people for not knowing, not being the same.
yeah,
Go back to the assumption, and we all know what assume stands for. Well, in English, like we assume people understand things
mm,
when actually most people don't, because they don't. It doesn't affect them in the same way. And I think that knowledge is power there,
mm.
definitely.
You just have to be a little bit patient, also that people are not going to get it the first time. You have to explain it, and that's also like hard work.
That's really hard because you kind of have to have vocalized that and
Yeah,
understood. Before I knew HSP was a thing, I just knew I hated it, but I didn't really have the words or the reason to
yeah.
mention it. Do you know what I mean? But now I know how I work. I'm much more aware. But getting to
Um,
that point where you can vocalize it is hard, isn't it? You're
yeah,
right.
you have to get to know yourself first to be
Yes.
able to do that. That's also hard
Yes.
and uncomfortable.
Well, tell us about your Instagram and what you do on that. Find it.
Yeah, so my Instagram, highly sensitive underscore person. That's where I just share tips and tools and life hacks sometimes that makes your everyday life easier and helps you live life with a little bit less overwhelm as well. And it has grown to a really huge following. So I'm super grateful for that because it just started out as like a diary. When I
Yeah.
first figured out I was HSP, I just started it and just wrote whatever came to mind while trying to get to know myself. And then it just kind of exploded. So
Mm.
I found like I don't know what you say, a hole in the market. People talked about it on Instagram and online, but as a graphic designer, not in a way that spoke to me visually.
Yeah.
So I made it a little bit more warm and cozy.
You are clearly a very visual person and you see things like this is very cross-modal, very sensory crossover. You see things in colors and shapes and you understand the impact that has psychologically.
Mm.
You immediately understand it's clear, but it is warm and cozy. Okay, thank you. Finally, it's quite a big question. What's your definition for the art of living?
I would say getting to know yourself and living in alignment with who you are. It doesn't matter what you do or where you live or what you work with, just being true to yourself, I think.
Louise Henning, thank you so much for talking to me today.
Thank you for having me.
So, HSPs, HSPCs, as I accidentally call it all the time. I'm so glad you did the interview and not me because I would have tripped over that a lot. But um, I could tell really close to your heart, this, isn't it?
It was, and I know that I have come across as a bit of a bulldozer there, I must admit. Louise really reminded me of kind of who I used to be, actually, and I had to coax her out of her shell quite a lot. She's so accomplished in what she does. You see everything that she does on her website and on the Instagram. You can tell that there is still that, like a real sensitivity there. Whereas I feel like I've kind of bulldozed my way through that a little bit as I've got older. And yeah, that does come across a bit. So apologies for that.
Well, no, I think it's just a really good example of how you can be a bit of both. And we will talk in a bit about the complexities of different personality types, which we are only just really being exposed to, aren't we, in like the mainstream. But so what is your, I mean, I understand the HSP, but what I liked about this interview is touching on, the pros and cons. Like, what are the pros and cons to you?
To me, I mean, what I've really learnt about HSP is that there are immense challenges that come with it, but also immense superpowers that really should be celebrated, both as we get to know ourselves, but also in the workplace. So, superpowers wise, amazing empathy and incredible creativity. I think you'll find that most writers, artists, anyone that does anything sensory is probably a highly sensitive person. Incredible attention to detail, really strong intuition that other non-HSP should really listen to sometimes, I think. The big yin and yang I think about HSPs is that yes, we can get so overwhelmed by loud noises and life and like big bangs and strong smells and bright lights and all of that, but we also have the opportunity, I think, to see beauty at a whole level other level. like almost access more of it than a lot of people.
Yeah, in terms of the superpower of just hanging back a bit and not being really alpha and aggressively confident, seeing what's going on. It's like almost the protector, looking from side to side, what's going on in this situation, whilst the chatter is out there just up in their own head chatting and not, scanning almost. And I think that is
Mm.
like, I think the biggest superpower, especially in the workplace.
You need both in a team, don't you? You need people to observe how people are reacting, how your clients are reacting while your colleague is doing all the talking. You need that ability to read the body language and to really read the room, and that's what HSPs can bring.
Yeah. You just need the balance everywhere, don't you? It's like you need your little village all in one team.
You do, but has that ever been appreciated? It's normally the people who shout the loudest that get all the glory and, all the chances, and no one has appreciated that really until now. Hopefully, people are starting to do so.
Exactly. I mean, the way when we grew up, and particularly our type of school, there was just like one benchmark, which is where you wanted to get to, which was basically achieve this. And it was an aggressive race to get there, regardless of your personality type, regardless of what kind of support you needed to navigate getting there. So it would have been really lovely to have even like this should have been taught in schools. Like you're aware of the Myers-Briggs test, yeah?
Yeah, I'm aware of it. I've never done one.
No, I've sort of dipped into it. I haven't done it in depth, though I've kind of getting an understanding of myself just from reading about what it is. So the Myers-Briggs test has defined 16 personality types that anyone can discover themselves to be through this test that you can take yourself. It's using the theory of socionics, which basically divides people into 16 different types called sociotypes, which we've probably all heard that word, haven't we? What sociotype are you?
Yeah.
These types are extroversion, sensing, thinking, judgment, introversion, intuition, feeling, and perception. And they all defined by the first letter of the word. So extroversion E, sensing S, and so on. But the 16 personality types that then follow are a mixture. So you're basically given an acronym. So an ESTJ is an extroverting, sensing, thinking, judging person. And then you get the whole report on that, who you are. And obviously, with the research they've done, they've attributed how popular some of these are and how rare some are. And I've recently discovered the INFJ, which very much actually describes me, which because I've always felt quite contradictory because I'm incredibly introverted. I'm a crazy empath. I'd say I'm quite intuitive, but I also have, as you can probably tell in this podcast, I'm very comfortable public speaking. I'm comfortable challenging people. I'm comfortable making a firm decision, which sort of don't go hand in hand with the more tepid sides of my personality. But my point is, it's really lovely just to find out about yourself so you can then start navigating the world around you and start putting yourself in the right places in workplace and forgiving yourself things, forgiving other people things. And so, what's wonderful about hearing Louise talk about HSPs, it will just give you a better insight into how you can navigate every single part of your life with family, at work. And then, if other people are doing it, they can understand where you fit in and where you can all benefit each other. And that's why I'm really into this. Going to do a massive deep dive on this Myers-Briggs, especially as the INFJ that I just discovered is only 1.5% of the population. So imagine thinking you've always felt a bit on the outside and then realizing actually it's a thing and I exist.
That's the point, though, isn't it? It's validation. And that is exactly the word that I felt when I very first came across Elaine Aron's book. And then because like, literally no one in the world seemed to care, I forgot about it until I was doing some parenting classes. And, the coach was like, have you read this book? Because I think your child might be a highly sensitive person. And I'm like, hang on a minute, I have. And reading it again was like, oh, I am allowed to be the way I'm meant to be. And there are other people out there. And actually we don't have to be shy about it. And we can shout about why it's good to be sensitive sometimes.
Plus, also, it's really good for self preservation. If you understand you're going to be sensitive to, and we've spoken about this before in episode 1 with Barry Smith, if you're aware of what your reaction is going to be in bright lights, in loud noises, you can use the tools to take a step out and just be generally better at your job and not come home frazzled. And by job, I mean like even if you have to hang out with your kids all day, just manage and know what to expect, know what it's going to do to your body, and then have the tools later to deflate, rather than, like, for example, self-medicate. So I just think it's gold knowing any of this, isn't it?
Yeah.
It must have been about 16 years ago. My husband and I met at work, and they took us out for a day and did one of these company-wide corporate events where it was called the color wheel test. And they basically did all these exercises all day. It was really fun, actually, these little role playing things and like surveys where you ended up being attributed a color. So if you were red, you were the alpha. You were the talker, but not the doer, the handshaker, the let's get this done, the leader. And then if you were blue, you were the absolute meticulous, mathematical, analytical type, but in the background, absolutely didn't even want to shake a hand. If you were green, you were really positive about what you were doing and could always see what needed to be done in the situation. How can I help you? People pleaser. And if you were yellow, you were the let's go out for beers. But
Hmm.
but my point as well is this was all done so we could use it as a sales tool. So we could actually find out mostly about how to work with our clients and try and identify them. So this was never about self-improvement. It was about get the most money out of you, but by knowing yourself, which is kind of great. But wouldn't it be nice if in another part of life, like maybe school or university, you were taught this for self-development reasons?
Yeah, it would have been handy before 40s, wouldn't it? But, at least we're learning it now.
But it's also not just about yourself, is it? It's about, especially, I find it an amazing parenting tool.
Mm. My youngest, who is very, very much highly sensitive, it was for her that we were trying to get some help because she couldn't deal with things that, the other sibling could. It sounds so similar. I mean, I don't know if you've had the scenario I know millions of parents have as well, when kids just cannot put their socks on in the morning, or their shirts or their ties, that that's too itchy. It's just, we'd get uniform on, then it would all come off again, then it would half go on, then it would all go off again, and all of this happens in this awful shouty chaos before 7 a.m. usually. And quite often it's just not about that. It's about other things as well.
Oh, yeah.
It's about not just having a go because they're having a tantrum. It's asking yourself why. What are they overwhelmed about? What are they not able to articulate? And just taking a couple of minutes to work that out pays dividends. And we were talking about the lady that coined the term the highly sensitive person and the book she wrote in 1996. She now has written one called The Highly Sensitive Parent as well. So it's like how to negotiate parenting as an HSP. And there's also a book called The Highly Sensitive Child. So it kind of covers all these bases, by proper experts who know how to help you deal with these things as well. We'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah, it's just invaluable, absolutely invaluable. But I do worry, and you touched on this in the interview. Sometimes I am a bit aware that it seems quite navel gazing and self indulgent, or there's negative sides to it, like, oh, you're sensitive, you're weak. But I say fuck you to that because knowledge is power.
It's not a very sensitive thing to say.
As much as, like, my husband probably is a bit over me banging on about being an empath, but he benefits from it because I can scan the room for emotions and see what's going on. I have 4 men in my house and 6 if you include my cats, 7 if you include my hamster, and I have to there's a lot of male energy, so I have to, like, scan whose is what, put it in its place, and, like, map it out, and then figure out is any mine. So, yeah, as much as, it's quite hard work, and Louise said, didn't she, in the interview, you have to work a bit harder as an HSP because there's so much going on under the surface and, like, plate spinning almost.
Yeah, exactly. So much. It's that rich inner life. Like I find that, well, I certainly can. I know you can if you get the chance, and other HSPs can. We can be alone for hours with our own thoughts, just processing, but just, being not bored, and being just enjoying your own company and working stuff out and just thinking deeply.
Oh, I love it's the greatest gift being on my own. Love it.
We're- yeah, I mean, I love it, and I'm not in the sort of maelstrom of very, very young kids anymore. So talking about the books you can read and those tests you can do to find out how best to work with yourself, but also with your family and your friends, etc. I think Louise now has actually started her coaching, because we actually had that conversation a little while ago. And I've noticed on her Instagram that this is all, everything she wanted to do is coming to fruition. So do check her out. Just to remind, she's at highlysensitive_person on Instagram. That's where she works a lot. But also you can find her website, highlysensitive.nu, which is NU.
And it's really lovely because it's just little tidbits, isn't it? What she posts. And it's just enough to sort of make you ask that question at the beginning of the day, just to set you up. And I think her ethos as well is to create a community of people and that network of support, which is just really important. So I'm way too sensitive to carry on talking about this shit. So I need to go. Thank you for joining us. Come and join us on all our socials at Flock and Hive. And also remember, there are articles covering everything we talk about that take a much deeper dive at flockandhive.com, and loads more interesting stuff.
Please tell your friends about the podcast if you're enjoying it, and help bump us up the charts. Give us a good rating. We'd really appreciate that. And don't forget, if you want to be here as a guest, get in touch.
Yeah, or if you have any suggestions of what you would like us to talk about, and we will have a dig around to see who we can bother next.
Also, our newsletter's going live this weekend, so please make sure you subscribe to that. You can do that on the website at flockandhive.com. In there, there'll be a roundup of podcasts from the last couple of weeks, some of the most popular articles, the odd giveaway, and extra little bits and pieces. So do sign up to that.
But until next week, goodbye.
Bye-bye.